Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a talk this morning about Anna Kingsford, who was a very interesting person in the Theosophical Society. But first, let's do the Golden Chain meditation. I'm a link in Lord Buddha's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I must keep my link bright and strong. I'll try to be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will try to think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and to do pure and beautiful deeds, knowing that on what I do now depends my happiness and misery. May every link in Lord Buddha's golden chain of love become bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Okay, thank you. So, Anna Kingsford, a most remarkable woman. So Anna Kingsford was born on the 16th of September, 1846, in Maryland Point, Stratford, which is now in East London, to John Bonus, a wealthy merchant, and his wife, Elizabeth Ann Schroeder. Her maiden name was Annie Bonus. She was part of a large family and was the youngest of 12 siblings. She was only 9 years old when she wrote her first poem and the story Beatrice, a tale of the early Christians. She wrote this when she was 13. And I looked for a copy of this next one. This was published, as was her first book of poetry, at River Reads. I looked online to find a copy of River Reads. And the copy I found was priced at over £7,000. 7,000. Maybe you can get it online somewhere for free. She was talented in all the arts, including music, drawing, and painting, but her great passion was writing poetry and short stories. Her family was very much into fox hunting until she had a vision of herself as the fox, which changed everything in her life. She was very psychic and had many visions and premonitions. She later wrote a book which contained many of these and some poems, Dreams and Dream Visions. I actually have a copy of that, it's very interesting. She married her cousin, Algernon Godfrey Kingsford, in 1867 when she was 21, giving birth to a daughter, Edith, a year later. Although her husband was an Anglican priest, she converted to Roman Catholicism in 1872. She is one of the first English women to obtain a degree in medicine and the only one to do it by refusing to experiment on animals. She was a very fervent vegetarian and anti-vivisectionist and an early advocate of women's rights. She had to go to Paris to get her degree as English medical schools did not admit women at the time. Her thesis was on vegetarianism, and despite much opposition, it was finally accepted, and she became Dr. Kingsford. The thesis was later published in book form as The Perfect Way in Diet. Controversially, Anna Kingsford was said at one point that she wanted to use occult methods against the vivisectionists. H.P. Blavatsky reply was, the master's attention was first drawn to you because of that feeling you have in you for poor animals. The venerable old Choa Chohan was for you when everyone, including myself, though in a lesser degree, was against you. When I went to London, I was prejudiced against you, and it is the master who blew me up for it and made me do my duty. All that came to pass later on was not the master's desire, but the rebellion of his would-be lay and unlay chelas. Chela had been a student of the master's. Therefore, I feel sure and know that the master approves your opposing the principle of the dissection, but not the practical way you do it, injuring yourself and doing injury to others without much benefiting the poor animals. Of course, it is karma in the case of Paul Burt. I don't know who Paul Burt is. I looked up, but I couldn't find any reference to this particular Paul Burt. But so it is in the case of every murdered man. So he must have been murdered for some reason connected to vivisection. Nevertheless, the weapon of karma, unless he acts unconsciously, is a murderer in the sight of that same karma that used him. Let us work against the principle, then, not against personalities. For it is a weed that requires more than 7 or 70 times 7 of us to extirpate it. So that was from a book called Anna Kingsford, Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophists by Edward Maitland. And he was a colleague. So Kingsford and Edward Maitland started to attend meetings of the London Lodge of the Theosophical Society, and in January 1883 they became members. She eventually was made president of the London Lodge, which did not go down well at the time with H.P. Blavatsky. The conflict between H.P. Blavatsky and Anna Kingsford stemmed from a disagreement about the direction of the Theosophical Society and the inclusion of Western esotericism alongside Eastern philosophies. Kingsford, along with her followers, favoured incorporating Western Hermeticism, while Blavatsky emphasised Eastern teachings. This disagreement led to Kingsford's departure and the founding of her own Hermetic Society. She also had links with the Golden Dawn, and it was rumoured that she actually was the inspiration for the Golden Dawn, although she didn't live to see it come into being, unfortunately. Now, P.G. Bowen states in a letter, my information concerning the Golden Dawn comes more directly from manuscripts left by my father, Robert Bowen, who was himself a member of the club mentioned by K.H. K.H. is Kutumi, or is known to us as Kutumi, was one of the Theosophical masters, and was a very intimate friend of Anna Kingsford. He was also connected with the Golden Dawn in the early 90s. He states definitely that Anna Kingsford, in 1885, I think, formed an inner group in her Hermetic Society, and in it were Wynne Westcott and MacGregor and Mathers. There was another member who my father often mentions as X or AA, and sometimes as Druid Friend X, or simply the Druid. And this person it was who brought the club material to Anna Kingsford, Westcott and Mathers, and were given access to it, and later made it the basis of the Golden Dawn rituals. A.E. was a student of George William Russell, was an early member of the Golden Dawn. End of quote. Despite many people exaggerating this disagreement, it was only temporary. And later, the relationship between H.P. Blavatsky and Anna Kingsford was harmonious. There were also disagreements between Kingsford and Alfred Sinnett, another member at the time, who was more interested in the occult side of things and psychism rather than the Brotherhood. which is the basis of the Theosophical movement. H.P. Blavatsky supported Sinnett. Who did sort of, you know, he supported Sinnett publicly, but some sources say that he visited Kingsford privately and told her she believed she should remain president. Kingsford believed all religions derive from one essential divine truth, which was subsequently misinterpreted and perverted by materialistic religious institutions, namely the Church. Comparisons between Islam, spiritualism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Egyptian myth, to name a few examples, abound in her writings. Deviations between religions are attributed to human error. While her focus was mainly upon Christianity, she did have a wider view that embraced all religions. The Theosophical Masters were supporters of Anna Kingsford and even referred to her as a fifth rounder. The world in general is in the fourth round, and so that means she was a whole round ahead of the general run of humanity. Plato is also said to be a fifth rounder, and Gautama Buddha a sixth rounder. Anna Kingsford wrote many books, some along with Edward Maitland. The main mystical ones are Clothed with the Sun, The Perfect Way or the Finding of Christ, and The Virgin of the World of Hermes Trismegistus. And this is translated by Anna Kingsford and Edward Maitland. She suffered from ill health for most of her life. Another proof of H.P. Blavatsky's respect for her appears in this letter. Dear Mrs. Kingsford, I am so glad to hear from the Countess, that will be the Countess Waschmeister, that you feel better and are now determined to will to live. I do hope that you will go on strengthening and progressing in health. Thanks so much for your pretty story. She's really very, very charming. But do let me put your full name. You must do this for poor Lucifer. And Lucifer is a magazine that she wrote, because she said, Lucifer was the light bringer. Not it was demonized by Christianity, but she wanted to restore it to its original meaning, which was the light bringer. So you must do this for poor Lucifer, as you are too good a writer and too well known for him to afford to receive a visit from you almost anonymously. We have too many reverends wanting to write for it. There's a real regular steeplechase, and you will laugh. If you are well enough by the end of this month, I would ask you to write an answer to Gerald Massey, who, speaking of the contradictions of the New Testament, calls it a volume of falsehoods and lies. I must do so if you do not feel strong enough, for it is absolutely necessary to show that the Bible is as esoteric as any other scripture of old. You'll read his attack in number 2 of Lucifer, which will appear in about a week. Please give my love to Mr. Maitland. I hear he does look pulled down. I love him and would love him if it were only for the care he gives to you and nursing you as he does throughout your illness. He is a dear man. Yours sincerely and faithfully, HPB or H.P. Blavatsky. Again, that's from Anna Kingsford, Madame Blavatsky, and The Theosophist by Edward Maitland. When she was in Paris in November 1886, she went to the laboratory of Louis Pasteur to confront him regarding his vivisection experiments. She was caught in torrential rain and developed pneumonia and then pulmonary tuberculosis. She travelled to the Riviera and Italy, sometimes with Edward Maitland and sometimes with her husband, to try and aid her recovery. But she died on the 22nd of February, 1888, at the age of 41. So H.P. Blavatsky actually wrote an obituary for her, which is very interesting. because it just shows that she did a lot of respect for Anna Kingsford. So I'm going to read it, the full one. It's quite long, but I'm going to read the full one because it gives an insight into what H. people have actually thought about her and some of the things that she did. So she wrote this obituary, the late Mrs. Anna Kingsford, MD, and it's in Lucifer, March 1888, pages 78 and 79. And she says, "We have this month to record, with the deepest regret, the passing away from the physical world of one who more than any other has been instrumental in demonstrating to her fellow creatures the great fact of the conscious existence, hence of the immortality of the inner ego. We speak of the death of Mrs. Anna Kingsford, MD, which occurred on Tuesday, February 22nd, after a somewhat painful and prolonged illness. Few women have worked harder than she, or in more noble causes, none with more success in the cause of humanitarianism. Hers was a short but a most useful life. Her intellectual fight with the vivisectionists of Europe at a time when the educated and scientific world was more strongly fixed in the grasp of materialism than at any other period in the history of civilization, alone proclaims her as one of those who, regardless of conventional thought, have placed themselves at the very focus of the controversy, prepared to dare and brave all the consequences of their temerity. Pity and justice to animals were among Mrs. Kingsford's favourite texts in dealing with this part of her life work. And by reason of her general culture, her special training in the science of medicine, and her magnificent intellectual power, she was enabled to influence and work in the way she desired upon a very large proportion of those people who listened to her words or read her writings. Few women wrote more graphically, more takingly, or possessed a more fascinating style. Mrs. Kingsford's field of activity, however, was not limited to the purely physical, mundane plane of life. She was a theosophist, and a true one at heart, a leader of spiritual and philosophical thought, gifted with most exceptional psychic attributes. In connection with Mr. Edward Maitland, her truest friend, one whose incessant watchful care has undeniably prolonged her delicate, ever threatened life for several years, and who received her last breath. She wrote several books dealing with metaphysical and mystical subjects. The first and most important was The Perfect Way, or The Finding of Christ, which gives the esoteric meaning of Christianity. It sweeps away many of the difficulties that thoughtful readers of the Bible must contend with in their endeavours to either understand or accept literally the story of Jesus Christ as it is presented in the Gospels. She was for some time president of the London Lodge of the Theosophical Society, and after resigning that office, she founded the Hermetic Society for the special study of Christian mysticism. She herself, though her religious ideas differed widely on some points from Eastern philosophy, remained a faithful member of the Theosophical Society and a loyal friend to its leaders. Both she and Mr. Maitland resigned from the London Lodge, but not from the parent society. She was one of the aspirations of those whose whole life were ever turned towards the eternal and the true. A mystic by nature, the most ardent one to those who knew her well, she was still a very remarkable woman, even in the opinion of the materialists and the unbelievers. For besides her remarkably fine and intellectual face, there was that in her which arrested the attention of the most unobserving and foreign to any metaphysical speculation. For as Mr. Fenwick Miller writes, though Mrs. Kingsford's mysticism was simply unintelligible to her, yet we find this did not prevent the writer from perceiving the truth. As he described her late friend, I have never known a woman so exquisitely beautiful as she, who cultivated her brain so assiduously. I have never known a woman in whom the dual nature that is more or less perceptible in every human creature was so strongly marked, so sensuous, so feminine on the one hand, so spiritual, so imaginative on the other hand. The spiritual and psychic nature had always the upper hand over the sensual and feminine, and the circle of her mystically inclined friends will miss her greatly, for such women as she are not numerous in the same century. The world in general has lost in Mrs. Kingsford one who can be well ill-spurred in this era of materialism. The whole of her adult life was passed in working unselfishly for others, for the elevation of the spiritual side of humanity. We can, however, in regretting her death, take comfort in the thought that good work cannot be lost or die. Though the worker is no longer amongst us to watch for the fruit, and Anna Kingsford's work will still be bearing fruit even when her memory has been obliterated with the generations of those who knew her well, and new generations will have approached the psychic mysteries still nearer. The boast made by the Roman Catholic Weekly Register to the effect that Mrs. Kingsford died in the bosom of the Church, having abjured her views, psychism and theosophy, and even her perfect way and writings in public and in general, have been vigorously refuted in the same paper by her husband, Reverend A. Kingsford, and Mr. Maitland. We are sorry to hear that her last days were embittered by the mental agony inflicted upon her by an unscrupulous nun who, as Mr. Maitland declared to us, was smuggled in as a nurse, and who did nothing but bother her patient, importune her, and pray. That Mrs. Kingsford was entirely against the theology of the Church of Rome, though believing in Catholic doctrines, may be proved by one of her last letters to us on poor slandered Saint Satan in connection with certain attacks on the name of our journal, Lucifer. We have preserved this and several other letters, as they were all written between September 1887 and 1888, January 1888. They thus remain eloquent witnesses against the pretensions of the Weekly Register, for they prove that Mrs. Kingsford never abjured her views, nor died in fidelity to the Catholic Church. And so that's the end of the talk. It's very, very interesting that she was such was ahead of her time in many of her views and ideas. And many people have emphasised the differences between her and H.P. Blavatsky, and that they had, some people even said that H.P. Blavatsky hated her. Of course, this proves that that was not true, that H.P. actually loved her. They may have had a slight difference at one time, but you can see from that, this what I've just read, how much she did think about her. So thank you very much for listening to this talk, and I've got another one coming up very soon, and just have a few moments of quiet just to settle our minds down and take in what's been said. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Peace on earth and goodwill to all beings. Thank you very much for listening.